Well, this month, our focus is the consciousness I am forms my universe. So what do we mean by consciousness? What exactly do we mean by consciousness? That's one of those words that philosophers and psychologists and scientists, everybody argues over what is the actual meaning of that word. And if you look in the back of the Science of Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes has quite a lengthy definition for that. And the first two words he uses are mental awareness. And then he describes various kinds of consciousness, including self-consciousness, which he calls spirit knowing itself. The self-consciousness that we have is spirit knowing itself. And then he talks about things like race consciousness or other types of consciousness, which are those things that are impacting our life and helping to form it, but we might not have the clarity of mental awareness around some of those things as we do others. And our goal is to bring that mental clarity into and that mental awareness into those things that we do that are forming our forward motion, where we're headed. So how then does it form our universe? Well, one of the things that I picture is those miner hats with a big light on the front. And to me, the consciousness sends from our belief and our expectation, or even our choices, through that hat a light out, and it seeks what it is that we're wanting, it seeks what we believe, it seeks what we expect, and that's what it illuminates in front of us. Out of all the vast possibilities, that's what gets illuminated, and of course then we follow the path that we've illuminated ahead of us through our consciousness. And that's how it starts to form our universe, because it's moving things into motion and creating them as we move in that direction of whatever it is that we expect, what it is we believe, or what it is we choose. I had a friend who is a Christian Scientist, and we were traveling together, and we were in a national park, and some kids were playing on the edge of a very steep slope, climbing on the rocks. And she said, "Let me get out of here before I malpractice on them." And she took off. So in her mind, she realized that her own fear projected on those kids could create a situation that she didn't want to witness. Because part of her mental state at that time was in a place of fear for what they were experiencing. And yet in their minds, they were having a great time and there was no fear. So at that point, they really weren't in danger. They were having fun, and there were parents around. So she needed to get out of there because her mental awareness was projecting out into their experience fear. Ernest Holmes says each person has a mental atmosphere, which is the result of all that he or she has thought, said, and done, and consciously or unconsciously perceived. The mental atmosphere is very real and is that subtle influence that constitutes the power of personal attraction. For personal attraction has little to do with looks. We often think we're attracted to other people's looks. But what's attracting are those mental attitudes, that piece of us that's going ahead of us and drawing in what we're going to light up because we expect that out of our experience. Further on, Holmes says, mental tendencies set in motion cast their shadows before. So Ernest Holmes was seeing it as a shadow. I see it sort of as what gets illuminated, but it's the idea that it's putting ahead of us a belief, a feeling, an attitude that then is allowing that thing to be what we see and where we're moving in our experience. I'm sure many of you have heard of the study where they took a group of children who had similar IQs and similar socioeconomic backgrounds, and then they split that class in half and told the professor or the teacher, this group are A-quality students, and this part of this class, they really don't have the same potential. Now at that point, I don't think the teacher in her mind consciously said, okay, I want these kids to fail and these kids to succeed. So what I'm talking about is not a conscious decision to make these things happen because we believe they will. You know, sometimes our experience tells us this isn't going to be good because that's what our experience has been. And I don't think we're asking for more not good to happen in our life. But that teacher's classroom performed based on her expectations. The children that were expected to do well did, and statistically significant difference in that group who did not do well based on her expectations. That was the mental attitude that went into that situation and created the outcome. And so our mental attitudes are very, very important. And I think they're part of that consciousness of the I am that's creating where it is that we are headed, that's creating what it is that shows up in our universe. So what mental attitudes are we projecting? What is it that we're seeing in terms of how we expect the world to respond to us? And how often does what we expect happen? Do we see or believe in a world that supports us, is on our side, is going to make sure everything is okay? Or do we believe in a world that is out to get us, where everything always tends to go the wrong way, or where we don't feel like we deserve the very best? What do we really expect out of the world? Now, often what we expect out of the world has to do with what we've experienced as a child and throughout our life, because we keep reaffirming what those early experiences were until we bring our mental awareness to that process. Now, I know I've said over and over and over in here, you can probably say it with me, my favorite passage of Ernest Holmes is, "Principle is not based on precedence." What an awakening that was for me. Principle, the principle that we live by, the truths of the universe are not based on the precedents that we've created in our life. We're creating more of the same through what we've experienced because we expect more of the same. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's the way principle has to work. And so how do we then move from experiencing more of the same, more of the same, more of the same, to experiencing something different and more in keeping with the principle that we know to be true? Something that brings about more of the experiences we want to experience. Well, the first question I think is to ask yourself, what do you expect? What are you expecting? After service today, when you go out into the social hall, what do you expect? Do you expect good food? Or do you expect not to find anything that you can eat? Do you expect to interact with people on a very friendly basis? Or do you expect to be ignored? What do you expect? And beyond these doors, how do you expect to be treated? What do you expect to experience? Now, when we teach treatment, often you'll hear this term, this or something better. And so can we take what we expect and add this or something better? We have to start where we are. So what do you expect? And then how can we shift that to this, what I expect now, or something better, to lift our expectation to something better than what it is that we normally experience. When we teach tithing in New Thought, we often talk about tithing. To begin that process of that practice, we say, well, look for your unexpected income and start tithing 10% of that to begin with. That helps you practice and see how it works before you try and dive into tithing 10% of all of your income. So focus on that unexpected income and at least tithe 10% on that. So what is meant by unexpected income? Well, our unexpected income are those things that we didn't actively try and earn or bring into our life, or we didn't expect to show up. So it could be a gift. Some great aunt somewhere could send you a couple $1,000s and say, hey, you know, I'm giving you this before I pass. That's unexpected income. You could find something on the street. If somebody takes you to lunch and unexpectedly offers to pay for it, what you didn't have to pay becomes unexpected income. I got my car worked on the other day, and they quoted me an amount, but they were wrong in their diagnosis, and what was wrong was going to cost more. But because they'd quoted me this amount, they kept it there. So my unexpected income was the difference between what it would have cost me if they had quoted me correctly and what they actually quoted me. That's unexpected income for me. Now, the interesting thing is once you start focusing on unexpected income, you start expecting unexpected income. You start to see it happening more often, and you start expecting unexpected gifts and unexpected grace to show up in your life. And the more you expect it, the more you focus on it, the more you give thanks for it, the more it happens. So I think that's very interesting that we end up expecting the very unexpected. That's how we're lifting our consciousness. Now, I'm sure you've heard it said, what other people think of you is none of your business. And what other people do in their life is none of your business. And so if we follow those teachings, that's another way that we can move out of some of that past stuff, is we keep our focus on our own business and see what it is that we're about and not worry about other people's business or what they're thinking about our business. And as we keep our focus on our business, we often remind ourselves, this too shall pass. This too shall pass. How many of you have ever said that to yourself? This too shall pass. And now, do you usually say that when it's something you're not enjoying? This too shall pass. How often do you say it when it's something you are enjoying? No. But the truth is, this too shall pass. What Cheryl read, the evolution of humankind is definite. We are always evolving every moment of our life. This too shall pass. And so does that mean that as I'm having fun today, I have to go, ooh, this too shall pass, and start expecting something bad? And then I'm over here and I'm having this bad experience. This too shall pass. I can expect something good. Oh, this too shall pass. I need to expect something bad. And I'm going back and forth on this pendulum between good and bad experiences. I don't think that's what is meant by this idea of evolution. Holmes says also in the textbook that we're using right now, Can We Talk to God? It seems as though behind evolution there is an irresistible pressure compelling more, better, higher, and greater things. So I think as we say this too shall pass, that we can expect it to get better. Everything, whether it's a good experience or a not so good experience, this will get better, this will get greater, this will get bigger. This too shall pass into something even better. We are constantly evolving. Now, what I think is interesting is a few pages before that, Holmes says, the perfect human is the only human God knows. The perfect human is the only human God knows. Well, if we're so perfect, why do we have to keep evolving? What is the point then? Well, when I was at the Albuquerque Center, Reverend Patrick always said, that which stinketh. I can't say it with all his at the end, but that which stagnates stinketh. In other words, if we are stuck, if we are not evolving, we're essentially dead, and we're going in that opposite direction of starting to rot and stink. So evolution is the way we keep alive. It's what keeps us moving and growing, and in part of that evolution is our smelling good, is staying alive, being where we need to be. Ernest Holmes uses the example of human locomotion. He talks about how originally humans figured out how to walk to get to different places. Then they learned how to ride horses. Then they learned how to stick a horse on the front of a cart, something with wheels, to get there even faster. And then they came up with cars and the locomotive and airplanes and all kinds of things. And I started thinking about, I'm still stuck on the Olympics and what I saw taking place there, because there's forms of human locomotion that even Ernest Holmes didn't see that are happening today. What I saw on the snowboards and the Iditarod and the speed of the speed skaters, humans are moving and doing different things than they even did 60, 70 years ago. They keep evolving in their potential and what they can do. And so each person that holds a world record, once they make a world record, do we say, well, that's it. That's all the further human potential is going to go? That's not what we say. That's the next record to break. That's the next point to move past. That's the next place that humans get to evolve beyond. Is any one of those records, those world records, is the next place that we get to see something better. And we're not saying then that each one of those gold medals, each one of those world records was bad. It was wonderful. It was something to celebrate, but it's the springboard for the next wonderful, the next gold medal, the next achievement of humankind. So earlier I asked, what do we do to help raise our consciousness so we can evolve into the better, into that experience of it getting better and better? Well, first of all, like I said, I think we need to expect more, change our expectations, expand our expectations. Second, I think we need to look for the good. We look for the good in this moment, and we also look for the good in all of these experiences in the past, those places that we've been, those things which have been springboards for us to move into the better. Because as we do that, then we're going to shine the light on something better as opposed to the same thing. And we'll follow that path. As I was putting this together, something came across my Facebook that said, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Can you see that eye? Isn't that amazing? If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And so if we take a new perspective, and we take that new perspective and even look backwards with it on our past, we can rewrite our stories. And I think that's another thing that we can do. We can rewrite our stories in order to help us spring forward. We can rewrite, I am a victim, to I am a survivor. In my life, I saw my father when I was growing up as being mean. He was hard on me. He expected a lot out of us kids, and he was constantly there helping us to practice. I had to get first place when I competed in dance. I had to get A's in school, and it was just a constant pounding. I look back with new eyes, and what I see is a father who was more involved in my life than most fathers were in their children's lives. Amen. What I see is a father who loved me and showed his love through that high expectation. He didn't believe that as a girl I was expected to do less than my brother. So I was never given that message. So through that, I can go back with new eyes and rewrite my story. And I can rewrite it to say I had a father who loved me and expected me to do well because I could do well. And that was a good thing. And that now can motivate me to move forward in a whole different way. So in our class, one of the things we're looking at is how Ernest Holmes talks about evolution. And one of the things he says is that evolution follows involution. Now, I admitted to the class, and I will admit to you, when I first read that, and I've read that several times since, I thought, well, Ernest Holmes probably made up that word involution, because it wasn't one that I was familiar with. And the picture that I had was, well, evolution is moving this way, it's moving forward, so involution is sort of that same movement inward into myself in an evolutionary sort of way. Well, this time I decided to look the word up. What an amazing concept. And what I found is that it's a real word. And the word actually means the act or instance of involving or entangling. So what Holmes is saying is that evolution follows involution or our involvement. Once we get involved with our evolution, that's when it can actually take place. So how we get involved through prayer, through treatment, through meditation, through visioning. And so if you are interested, I'm putting in a plug here, in seeing the evolution of this center, please join us in our visioning next week after the service. We'll be visioning, because that is one of those things that helps us to evolve through getting involved. And of course, in addition to that is taking action. So what it is we vision, what it is we discover through our meditation, we then take action on. That's how we get involved with our own evolution. Now, when we do this, that doesn't necessarily mean we're never going to have any challenges in life. How many of you have ever canoed or kayaked or gone rafting? Anybody had that experience? And come upon rapids? Anybody seen that in movies? Okay. I used to actually teach backpacking and canoeing in the summers. And so we would canoe along and just have a great time. And one of the things I like to do is canoe in the front, facing backwards, but canoeing this way, while the person in the back would be facing me forward, and we would go that way and we could have a good conversation. So I'm canoeing this way, and they're canoeing forward, and we're having a great conversation. That person was watching where we were going and ruddering and making sure we were safe. What I think happens a lot is that we tend to get in our canoe of life and paddle this way. And we keep going, and we keep going, and we keep going, and we keep going. Yeah, we end up down the rapid backwards. Thank you. We end up down the rapid backwards, bounced around, bounced out of our canoe, hitting the rocks, being pulled under, and maybe spit out alive at the other end, because we're too busy facing backwards. We're too busy watching our past, focused on that, focused on what happens in our past. And we don't have the person ruddering for us. And when we get out and we shake ourselves off and limp over to the shore, we say, see, life is always hard on us. See what happens to me all the time? See, I always get a raw deal, and ouch, pain has become the norm because that's how I go through all my experiences. That's the way life is. And I might even say, who put that rapid there anyway to trip me up? Who did that to me? Now, I think getting involved in our evolution means taking the responsibility to turn around and start paddling forward. And as we paddle forward and we come up upon a waterfall or the rapids, we start to recognize our choices and our options. And we realize we can pull over and portage around, or we can learn to navigate our way down the rapids. And whether we're in a raft or a canoe or a kayak, sometimes we get bounced out. And we can learn what to do when we get bounced out. And what we need to do is right ourselves so our head stays above water. We put our feet forward. So we're sitting, I don't know how to do it, like our head's here and our feet are here. So we're sitting with our feet forward. Our feet are there to bounce off of any rocks and help us move around so we can get out at the bottom. We might even decide to wear a life preserver so it helps us to stay buoyed above water. So as we approach life's rapids, one of the things that we need to do is turn around and face forward instead of the past, where we're headed. And we learn to right ourselves so our head stays above water so we can breathe. We focus on our breathing, which comes through that practice of meditation. So we meditate daily. We practice that breathing. So when we start getting bounced around in the rapids, we can keep ourselves afloat and keep breathing throughout that process. And we allow ourselves to keep our feet forward so as we see things coming, we can just bounce off of them and move around. We don't have to get bruised up and experience so much pain anymore. And you know what's really interesting? When people go through rapids that way, they actually call it fun. Fun. Some people actually choose to have that experience. But they've learned how to navigate. They've learned how to do it in such a way that they're not in a lot of pain. So in the beginning of my talk, I said that other people's business is none of your business. And what others think of you is none of your business. And yet, that's only partially true. Several months ago, I can't remember when, I gave a talk that was called Both and. And I was looking at how there are sometimes teachings that we have that seem like they're opposites or seem like they shouldn't go together, and yet they both are true. They both are part of the reality of our human experience. And so if the reason we are concerned about somebody else's business or what they think of our business is just to get all upset about it or gossip about it or worry about it, then it is none of our business. But there are ways, based on this idea of our mental attitude and how it impacts others, that it is our business. Because we know that we are all connected. And we know that that experience that they're having is part of our experience on a different level. And so one of the things that I also say is that as we evolve, as we move through life, and as people around us do, one of the greatest gifts we can give someone is to recognize that evolution, to honor that evolution, and not to continually treat them how they used to be, but to recognize where they are today and interact at that level. And to do the same for ourselves, to recognize how far we've come, where we've evolved to, and interact with ourselves in our new way, in our more evolved way. So what do you envision as your greatest potential, as where you are evolving to? Is there some way that you need to turn around and start paddling forward? And is there anyone that you are projecting limitation on, assuming that they've stagnated, as opposed to allowing them to evolve? Recently, if you're on the email list, you might have gotten a letter from me. And if you're not on the email list, there's a copy of it out there. And in that letter, I was recognizing the fact that this center has turned around and started paddling forward. We're no longer paddling backwards, focused on what's happened to us in the past, but we're facing forward and we're moving forward. And I asked everyone who read that letter to join us in that evolved consciousness, to recognize that we are lifting our consciousness and moving forward, because I recognize that how people think about us can create a mental attitude that tries to drag us under, like those eddies do. And so we are buoying ourselves up, and we are asking for that additional support in consciousness to recognize that we are lifting ourselves up and moving forward. And one of the things that happens when you sit that way in the water is that this rush behind you actually helps to lift you up and move you forward. It helps to keep you in the flow. And that's one of the things that we can allow our past to do without letting it drag us down and try and drown us. It can actually lift us up and move us forward. So I thought it was interesting in the Science of Mind magazine from last month, the very last affirmation for March 31st was, "The way we view one's responsibility to others has changed dramatically in the religious science movement. We used to be able to look at a homeless person on the street and say, oh, that's his consciousness. His business isn't our business. Now we look and say, that's in my consciousness too. Spiritual growth is no longer an individual pursuit. So as a movement, we've embraced the global heart. We've awakened to the truth of oneness, and that we have a responsibility to uplift our own consciousness, because that in turn uplifts the consciousness of humanity. And we cannot live our lives without seeking to uplift others." And so it's both and, like I said before, we are a part of each other. So our consciousness is impacting others as well as their consciousness is impacting us. And we work to uplift all of that, to evolve forward. Evolution follows involution. We get involved. We turn around. We face forward. We heal our past. We rewrite our story. We focus on the good and let it uplift us and move us into a new expectation of good. We evolve into something better and better and better, and we know not only we are, but so is everyone around us. We learn how to navigate, how to effectively handle life's rapids. We keep our head above water. We keep breathing. We learn to lean back into the past and let us buoy us forward. We stay in the flow. We keep our feet ahead of us so we can bounce gently off of those obstacles that come into our way. We seek training if we need it, and how to do that. Whether we get that through a practitioner, a counselor, whatever, we get the training we need to keep ourselves moving forward. And we always remember to say, this too shall pass. This too shall pass, as we're moving and evolving into something better. And so now you get to call life's rapids fun. And so it is. So as we move into prayer, one of the things we can remember as we do this evolutionary process and help ourselves along this way is that we are always blessed. We are always blessed. So I want to use Ricky Byers' song, "Blessed Always," to take us into prayer.
Surround us, let our joy
just know as we take this message in that we are ever evolving forward. We are ever evolving forward. That Spirit is moving in and through us, uplifting us, keeping our head above water, helping us navigate through life. We are allowing all of those touch points in our past to be part of what lifts us forward. We have new records to break, and we know that isn't where it ends, that we continue to evolve into something greater, better, higher, brighter. And so we give great thanks for that as we rest in God and say, Amen. And so it is.